Iceland is one of the safest countries in the world. With a population of just over 370,000 people, it has gone entire calendar years, 2003, 2006, and 2008 among them, without recording a single murder. The police force operates largely unarmed. Drug offenses are often settled with fines rather than imprisonment. People leave their doors unlocked. Women walk home alone at night without a second thought. Strangers offer rides, and strangers accept them, because in Iceland, that is simply how things are. Trust is not naive there. It is the norm. That is the country Birna Brjánsdóttir grew up in. Birna was born on November 28, 1996. She was a 20-year-old woman living with her father in Breiðholt, a residential district of Reykjavik. She worked as a sales assistant at Hagkaup department store. She was outgoing but sensible, and her friends called her their happy pill. She was never late for work. Her phone was always on. On the evening of Friday, January 13th, 2017, Birna went out with a group of friends to Hura, a club in central Reykjavik. Her friends left around 2 a.m. Birna told them she would stay a little longer. 3 hours later, as the club closed at approximately 5 a.m., she left alone. It was January in Iceland. The sun would not rise until just before 11 a.m., so she walked out into complete darkness. The temperature was -9 degrees Celsius. She began making her way along Laugavegur, the city's main shopping street. Surveillance cameras picked her up, walking and stopping briefly to buy food, which she ate as she walked. Footage showed her bumping into a stranger at one point and dropping some money. She appeared calm. At Laugavegur number 31, a red Kia Rio pulled up and she got in. That was the last time she was seen alive on camera. Had she intended to walk home to Breiðholt, it would have taken nearly 2 hours. Taking a lift from a passing car was not unusual in Iceland. The country had an informal ride-sharing culture called skutlarar, where strangers routinely offered and accepted rides without suspicion. Birna had no reason to be afraid. Her phone signal was traced moving south toward Hafnarfjörður, a port town roughly 10 kilometers from the city center. The signal was specifically pinged to a tower at Flatahraun in Hafnarfjörður at 5:50 a.m., then went dead. When Birna failed to show up for work the next day, her colleague Maria contacted the friends who had been out with her the night before. They assumed Birna had gone straight to her father's house. Her mother, Silla Hreinsdóttir, was called. By that evening, a missing persons report was filed with the Lögreglan, the Icelandic police. Silla posted a message on Facebook that night, asking if anyone had seen her daughter. The post was shared thousands of times. Birna had not been sighted. Initially, police were slow to launch a formal search. In Iceland, people simply did not disappear. So Silla took friends and family to the harbor at Hafnarfjörður herself and began knocking on doors. It was Silla's insistence and the media attention her appeals attracted that pushed the police into action. What followed was the largest search operation in Iceland's history. Over 800 volunteers and 80 vehicles combing the country over the next week. 2 brothers who joined the search headed to the harbor at Hafnarfjörður. There, they found Birna's Doc Martens boots. Divers were sent into the freezing water. Drones were deployed for an aerial view. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage from the port and found the red Kia Rio on camera, stopping at the harbor at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning to let a man out. The man staggered onto the Polar Nanok, a Greenlandic fishing trawler. The car then drove away and was not seen again until 11 a.m. The number plate had been unreadable on the Laugavegur footage, but the harbor footage was clearer. The car was traced to a local rental company and identified as having been hired by Thomas Muller Olsen, a 25-year-old crew member of the Polar Nanok from Greenland. He had gone drinking in Reykjavik that Friday night with his crewmate, Nikolai Olsen, before the ship was due to depart. By the time investigators made this connection, the Polar Nanok was already at sea, fishing off Greenland. Police initially planned to fly officers onto a Danish warship, the Triton, sail to Greenland, pick up local officers, and board the trawler at sea to make the arrests. That plan never became necessary, A journalist covering the case had found a private Facebook page for crew members and messaged Thomas about the Kia Rio. Thomas, worried about his job, showed the message to the ship's captain. The captain began reading about the case and quickly understood that his vessel was linked to Birna's disappearance. He made a decision. He turned the ship around, told the crew the engine had malfunctioned, and switched off the Wi-Fi so no one could read the news, or, crucially, dispose of evidence overboard during the return voyage. On January 18th, the Polar Nanook docked back at Hafnarfjordur. The harbor was closed to the public. With the cooperation of the ship's captain, officers from the National Police Special Unit had been airlifted to the vessel aboard Coast Guard helicopter TFLIF. The Icelandic Counterterrorism Unit, the Vikingasveitin, was on board. Most of the Reykjavik police force was positioned along the dock in 12 waiting police cars. 2 crew members were arrested on suspicion of murder. Birna's blood was found in the back seat of the Kia Rio, despite a thorough cleaning. When forensics applied luminol to the car's interior, it lit up extensively. Thomas had been captured on surveillance footage buying cleaning products, bags, and new clothing from a nearby supermarket in the hours after he dropped Nikolaj off at the ship. His phone had been switched off for 4 hours during that window. The car's mileage showed he had taken a long drive, a drive that investigators calculated would have taken him to the Selvogsviti lighthouse and back. When examined by doctors, Thomas was found to have scratches across his chest. When his cabin was searched, officers also found over 23 kilograms of hashish, brought on board in Denmark with a street value of approximately 1.4 million pounds. Birna's driving license was found in a bin on the ship with Thomas's fingerprints on it. Nikolaj was released from custody after 2 weeks. Investigators concluded he had not been involved in Birna's death. The surveillance footage showed him leaving the car in a heavily intoxicated state and boarding the ship several hours before Thomas. Charges against him were dropped, and he became a witness for the prosecution. On January 22nd, 8 days after she disappeared, Birna's body was found. It was a low-flying helicopter that made the discovery. Her body had washed up near the Selvogsviti lighthouse on the Reykjanes Peninsula, more than 40 kilometers from where she had last been seen. She was naked. The autopsy confirmed her cause of death as drowning, with bruising indicating she had also been strangled and struck in the face. There was no evidence of sexual assault. Based on the findings, she was likely still alive when she entered the water. Thomas Müller Olsen was formally charged with murder on March 30th. In his first police interrogation, he admitted he had picked Birna up in the red Kia Rio, but denied murdering her. By the time the trial began, his account had shifted significantly. On the stand before 3 judges, he claimed it was actually Nikolaj who had driven off with Birna after Thomas stepped out of the car to urinate, and that Nikolaj had picked him up later without Birna present. The judges did not accept this account. In August of 2017, Thomas pleaded guilty to the drug smuggling charge, but maintained his innocence on the murder. In September 2017, the Reykjanes District Court found him guilty of murder and sentenced him to 19 years in prison. He appealed. In November 2018, the High Court upheld both the conviction and the sentence. A further appeal was rejected in February 2019. In October 2019, Thomas Müller Olsen was transferred to Denmark to serve out his term. He was also ordered to pay 29 million Icelandic krona, approximately $243,000 in costs and compensation. The case had a profound and lasting effect on Iceland and beyond. 8,000 people attended a memorial in Reykjavik. 2,000 more, including the president and prime minister, attended her funeral at Hallgrímskirkja. She was laid to rest at Reykjavik Cemetery. The hashtag Birna spread across social media internationally. In Nuuk, Greenland, hundreds gathered outside the Icelandic consulate in -17-degree temperatures for a candlelit vigil. People in Denmark and the Faroe Islands also paid their respects. The Polar Nanook donated 1.6 million krona to the search and rescue volunteers. Crime writer Ursa Sigurdardóttir said, "In the past, we have only witnessed murders like this in works of fiction. In the months that followed, Reykjavik expanded its CCTV network, and a women-only version of the Skutlarar rideshare service was created in direct response to what had happened to Birna. Then, in March 2018, on the first anniversary of her death, members of the Polar Nanok crew returned to lay a wreath on her grave. Iceland had built its identity on safety. On the night of January 13th, 2017, that identity was tested, and the country never quite looked at itself the same way again.